Okay. Hi everyone everyone who just joined us now. My name is Kukulis Mahlangu. We will be starting our topic in 3 minutes. Our speakers are here. And thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited for this topic. I'm looking forward to it because everyone wants to be a farmer, but I don't think we think about being a businessman or a businesswoman. And also shout out to Fatso Naledi. She will be recording this session. So if you guys would like to revisit this farm space, follow Fatso Naledi. She records all our farm spaces from episode 1 to episode 8. So hi Fatso. So yeah, that's also another thing. Alrighty, there's like a minute left. So I think what we can do, should we start with the introductions or should we just wait a bit?
I'm happy to start. My time also says a minute left, so I don't know if you want to wait for more listeners or should I just go ahead and start? If that's okay with you, Bandile.
I think just by virtue of the fact that you've communicated a certain time, maybe you give people up until that time to join, and then you can begin to start because I imagine it would be it might be unfair for people that usually right on time, right?
That's fair. Okay. So we just have 1 more minute to go and then we shall start. All right. I think we can start. Well, I'll start and then at exactly 6 p.m. I think that's when the introductions will begin. So, hello everyone. My name is Guguletu Mahlangu, and I will be your host today for another exciting edition of Farm Spaces, episode 8. We are shifting things a bit, we're switching it up, and we are delving into the business side of agribusiness. And we're talking to our two experts who will introduce themselves just in a bit. And yeah, I hope that I cover most topics and questions with our speakers, but if I don't, I do open up the floor later on for you guys to ask speakers questions that you need to clarify on, or you'd like maybe more details on that I haven't covered. So that's how we do it. So I think we can start. Speakers, could you guys kindly unmute yourselves and do a little bit of introductions, who you are, what you do, and we will start with you, Bandile.
Cool. Thank you, Gugu. So my name is Bandile Matandela, and I am the CEO of Orem Innova, which I'm sure you might be wondering, what am I doing in the farm spaces? Orem Innova is predominantly within the healthcare space. However, I'm also an entrepreneur who's founded and run a couple of businesses. And part of that is I was one of the founding members of a agricultural cooperative out in Eastern Cape. And on the back of the work that we did with that cooperative, we were able to farm about 3,000 hectares of land for various communities across the province, as well as leading to the employment of just over 100 people. We continue to be involved in that space, more so on a CSI perspective right now, where we support about 80 women-led households in Flagstaff and supporting them with their home gardens with the view of helping them achieve food security and then begin to expand into running their own basically smallholder farms. So I also do a bit of work in the media space. I do the business raps. I'm a contributor on Radio 2000 Drive Time Show with Cleanzito and the team, as well as on Ayabonga, on Metro FM Talk with Ayabonga Tawe. And yeah, I'm just an entrepreneur. I also am one of those people that dispel the myths that you can't have a 9 to 5 and be an entrepreneur. So thank you very much, and it's a real pleasure to be here. And thank you to you all for joining in today. Hopefully, will be able to provide some value and contribute in a positive manner into your businesses, your farms, as well as your lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vandile. Wonderful introduction. Katlach, we'll move on to you. Please just introduce yourself and feel free to tell us what you need to.
So, hi everyone. My name is Katla Khongwani, also known as the legal Buddha Macy. I've got a business called Katika Consulting, amongst other businesses. So, like Bandile, I'm also an entrepreneur and a person that has a 9 to 5, but with other interests. In terms of what we're talking about today, I am a lawyer and I specialize in agricultural law. And basically, what that means is that my core focus or my core business in this agricultural space is that I help farmers like yourselves figure out all the sort of regulatory and compliance issues that you might face um, when you are doing your business or trying to start up your farming business. My clients range from wine farms to citrus to blueberries to whatever you can think of. Pigs, actually. Today I had my pig farmer client. And a lot of my clients are what one would consider mega growers or mega farmers. So those are the guys that are exporting and also obviously supplying your huge retailers in the country. My interest and my focus in the last sort of 4 years of doing what I do has been exclusively that and exclusively that particular market. But obviously, being a South African and a Black woman, I am very aware of emerging farmers and all the efforts farmers like yourself and others are doing in order to get into the industry. And my thing now is okay, maybe it's time for me to assist as well in that sort of space, which I really haven't done before. I've just been focused on the sort of bigger, which is wrong of me. I'm trying to correct that. And thank you so much for having me here. And I'm very excited to engage.
Thank you so much, Katlaho, for your time, and I'm looking forward for you just also giving back to us. We really appreciate that. I think Ubandile is having network issues, but he will definitely pop back up again. So we shall start with you, Katlaho. Tell us the good news. Agriculture is an ever-growing industry. But just from a legal perspective and also a business perspective, um, you know, is there a space for agribusiness? Like, are we in the right sector? Like, are we part of the growing market when it comes to agriculture? Is there space for us and we just don't know about it?
Oh, wow. If there's any space in any sector that I would say anyone must get involved in, is agribusiness. I think just the understanding of what agribusiness is and the execution that I've seen some people do is exactly why I was so interested in maybe having this chat tonight, is because a lot of people think it's as simple as all I need is land, you know. And the thing is, yes, you need land, but there's about 10 other things that you need in order to make sure that you get into the space and be successful and fruitful in it. But if the question is whether it's a booming industry, of course, because it's one of the oldest industries, one. Two, is one that you can't get rid of because we all need to eat on a basic level. We need farmers to feed us. But then also, it's a successful industry because not only are you feeding me, Katlaho, that's here in the country, you possibly could grow so big that you could feed, not just the whole country, but, outside of our country and beyond, into the world. Because as you know, as farmers, farming is not the same everywhere in the world. And there's some things that South Africa specifically offers the world that they can't do themselves. So they must get from us. So most definitely, you guys are in the right business. It's just how you do it. That's the trick.
Yeah, that is the trick. And I'm so glad you guys are here to just give us the tips and the tricks because we all want to be successful. And when it comes to paperwork, I myself also get lost. And I hope you guys can shed some light. So I think I will start with the most basic of basic. Everyone tells us that, okay, to have agribusiness. To start your farming enterprise, you need a business plan. Can you guys just tell us the importance of a business plan? Because I think we all know that drafting a business plan, first of all, it's time consuming, but we need to understand the benefits that it brings. Why is it so important? So if you guys can just tell us from a business side, why should we start with a business plan? Bandile, if you're back, I will take this question to you.
Cool. I don't know if you guys can hear me clearly. Sorry about that. We actually just got load shedding. So it usually affects our network. So I'm actually trying to move to an area that's not load shedded. Can you confirm if you can hear me properly?
Loud and clear, Bandile.
Cool, thank you. I mean, I think in simple terms, Gugu, if we wanted to explain the importance of a business plan, right, it's like asking someone who's about to navigate a new route whether or not they need a map, you know? Essentially, a business plan is the map that's going to guide you in arriving into your destination. Of course, it's not a fixed map or a set map, and it's going to evolve with time as different scenarios arise. But I think for me, it's quite important because if you consider some of the components of a business plan, and I think for me, one of the most important, like the two most important.
All right, so I think Obandile did say anyway that he's experiencing load shedding. So Katlaho, please take over the question that I asked about the importance of a business plan, and what kind of strategy should we be looking out for. I will get to the finance aspects of it, but I just want just the fundamental. Why do we need a business plan? What does that even mean?
Okay, so we need to start from the point, like, Bandile was saying, that it's like a map. If you're going somewhere, you need a map and you need to know where you're going. And a business plan is planning out what exactly is your idea, what are you trying to achieve, and by having it as a document in front of you to look at where you're going with it, it makes it easier to go backwards and say, okay, so where do I need to start? And the importance of that is simple, is that you need to actually know where you're going. You can't just be doing things for the fun of it or for the interest of it. And also it helps you make, if you're going to make mistakes, which you will, it helps you make them faster and recover from them faster because you have an actual plan. Like Bandile said, and he's correct, it's going to change and evolve over time as your business changes, grows, or you face some challenges and you realize that you have to change course. But if you don't have it, it's like dreaming. You need to actually put something down so that you can have an action plan forward.
What does a business plan mean in terms of just paperwork wise, because as a farmer, I mean, yeah, I farm. My focus is on my production. So what does it mean to have a business plan? Can the business plan like speak for me in terms of where I need to go financially? Like what does it do for me? Yes, now I've spent time and time again, drafting this business plan. Like where do I use it?
So your business plan can just, so you talk about production. Production is just one part of, your business and your business plan. But what about your marketing? Who's going to be your end market? So today we're planting spinach, but who do we plan to sell that spinach to? That should actually be something you've answered before you even plant that spinach, because what's the point of planting spinach if you don't have a market or an idea of where you're going to take that market? If your goals is to say, okay, I want Spa to take my local Spa to plant, the manager or the owner at Spa agrees to take your product in the end. So it's product, it's marketing. Of course, it's finance as well. It's your budget. Some people are self-funded, while they work full-time jobs. So how much do you think do you need to put aside in order to make those dreams of yours come true, including petrol, transport, employees, all of those things are things that you would put in your business
We are losing our speakers. I think it's probably network or load shedding on their side. Bandile did say that he's experiencing load shedding. So, Katlaho, can you hear us? Yeah, no, load shedding, guys, literally is ruining our lives. I actually really wanted to speak more on the production plan as well, because I have a production plan myself, but I really want to know how it would look like to investors, because a production plan obviously is our action plan, right? And it will include like a 3-year acreage. So if like for me, I'm doing crop production, so I obviously need to show my crop rotation estimates like for each crop yield. So let's say I'm doing, spinach, baby marrows, and green beans. So I need to, and then the following season I'm doing something else. I need to show that this is what I estimate every single time I'll be planting. And I think for livestock it will be more detailed because there's weaning rates, there's herd sizes and growth and weaning weights, but your production plan is literally your key to investors. So I really want the speakers to touch on that. And I see they're coming in, they're coming out, they're coming in, they're coming out. So I'm just going to take questions as we go.
Yeah, sorry, I've literally just driven down the highway, and as soon as I saw lights, I've stopped on the side of the highway. I'm happy to continue with the conversation.
Thank you so much for your efforts. We really appreciate it. Ukatlaho, she said she doesn't have load shedding, but something is also up there, but she'll also join us. So Bandile, I was
Can
speaking.
can can you hear me? Because I'm
Yes,
back.
Katlaho.
Okay,
Are you
great,
back?
awesome.
Okay,
Yes, I'm back.
perfect. Okay, so I was actually speaking on the production plan, right? And I guess I'm speaking for myself here, but for everyone as well. So I have a production plan, and a production plan is very important for farmers. We need to have our business plan and our production plan because our business is a very extensive operation. So if you're doing crops like myself, you need to show because it's not like I'm doing like grapes. I'm not a vineyard. I do a variety of vegetables, and I will have to rotate my vegetables, just for soil health and for the betterment of my business. I don't want diseases and pests. So I'll have to rotate my crops. Now, just drafting a production plan obviously will show the bank or investors that, okay, this person grows X, Y, and Z. These are the estimates that she has. How do I make my production plan attractive for investors?
So maybe I can come in. Can you confirm that you can still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly.
Yeah. So I mean, I think for me, I'll take it a bit of a step back, Gugu, and I get your point, and I get where you're going with the importance of a production plan. But I think when you mention banks and when you mention potential investors, you need to be very clear on who your target is because different investors, different banks, different FIs look at different things as a measure that will determine whether or not they invest. Interestingly enough, I am an accountant by training, and I've worked in investments for quite a lot, and we did some interesting investments in agriculture, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. And one of the things that we looked at beyond just the production plan is how you are able to interpret your production plan into your financial plan, into your marketing plan. Because a production plan on its own really doesn't tell us much except that you know that you know how to produce your needed crop. It is more important for yourself, I would believe so. I think your production plan is more important for yourself because ultimately your marketing plan and your financial plan needs to speak to your production plan, and that's what's going to determine whether or not you've got enough crops to be able to sell to the market that you've projected you're going to sell into. So how do you make it more attractive? Maybe to answer your question specifically is to make sure that it links and speaks to the marketing plan, to make sure that it's linked and it speaks to the financial plan, and also the yield. I think for me, with your production plan, you need to be able to demonstrate that the way you are going about it, the way you are approaching it, is going to lead to the maximum amount of yield that we can get out of that hectare. Because the bigger the yield, the bigger the projected revenues that we can get for that specific crop and in that specific land. So for me, the biggest indicator that I'd be looking for in the production plan, more than the scheduling, more than whether you understand the technical requirements, is what is your projected yield? Because ultimately that's going to determine the money that flows into the business and is going to then determine the return that flows back to the financial institution. I don't know if that captures it, or if you'd like me to elaborate a bit better or touch on any specific point.
I do want us to delve into this because it's so important. I'm gonna also speak from a small scale perspective. I am a farmer. There's a lot of farmers who know how to farm like from the back of their hand. But when it comes to paperwork, it's just simply something that they don't understand or they don't have. So okay, fine. They do have a production plan, they do have a business plan. So now how do we calculate profitability and economic feasibility of future resources and possible value adding opportunities? Here's my big plan, and I've done all the calculations. I've said that I know the markets. I've said that this crop this year is going to give me X amount. Now, how do I calculate that? Like, I'm not an accountant, I'm a farmer. So please just help us deal with the numbers, doing the whole financial plan. How should it look like? What should we calculate? And how do we determine that, you know what, I trust myself. I know that in 3 years, my business is going to pop and I'm going to add value into it. And therefore, as a bank or as an investor, you need to, trust me now and believe in the process, believe in the fact that I am selling you something that's valid. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think we must remember investors are not emotional people. They're not going to, also, they don't know you. So they don't know your ambition. They don't know how focused you are. They don't know how driven you are, and the only way to convince them really is through numbers and through data, and through things that make sense. So, for example, if you say to me that you're going to be farming maize and that per hectare you're going to realize a yield of so much, unless there's proven data, whether historic data or data within the market that can support what you're saying, then it's going to be very difficult to convince the investor. What do I mean? For areas like areas that are coastal, it is known and accepted in the market that they tend to have higher yields for certain grain. There's certain areas that are known for specific, because of the type of land, they'll be able to get certain yields. So I think first and foremost, it needs to make sense. We need to be able to back it with the relevant data. And some of this data is easily available from the Department of Agriculture sites. They generally do produce a lot of data in terms of yields, in terms of certain risks that are there, and also how do you calculate risk. So you need to be able to determine that you understand the business, and the biggest way and the best way to demonstrate an understanding of a business is by highlighting risk and then putting together mitigating factors to highlight that risk. For example, one of the biggest problems inland in South Africa will be the issue of rain and water. So if you can tell me that, listen, I've identified I've identified the drought as a potential risk, but as a mitigating factor, what I've done is A, B, C, D. I've got tanks that have certain water. It's going to be able to flow and irrigate, or I'm farming in such a way, or I'm utilizing certain technology that makes the requirement of water much less, and thus then mitigates against the risk of droughts. So I think for me, the numbers need to make sense first and foremost in terms of yields. Then the next step is, once you've established that, okay, on average in this particular area with this type of soil, I'll be able to get a so and so amount of yield. You then begin to then extrapolate from that. I mean, I think we complicate it because we're trying to fit it into these frameworks that have been put out there. It's as simple as understanding how much am I going to pay my laborer? How much is my seed going to cost me? How much is the land costing me? How much is the water costing me? And how much is the transportation costing me? And how much will it cost to actually harvest? That forms your entire cost base of that organization. You then look at the market and you understand how much are people currently buying my produce, or do I have contracts in place with certain retailers that will buy my produce. Once you've got that, or you've got the market price, you base it on the yield, multiply their selling price by your yield, your projected yield. You've got your projected revenue. So your revenues less all the cost that you've spent on it, you've now got an entire income statement. I think we just get bolted up in the terminology, and we get scared. Really, all you need to understand is what are the costs that are going into your farm. I think any farmer understands that very well. How much are we going to sell this produce by? And then you multiply that by your projected yield that you're going to take out of that particular season, and you've got an entire income statement. You replicate that over a 12-month period, you've got an annual financial statement. And then, of course, you want to take into account things like seasonality. Am I able going to be produced year round? Issues around storage. What's the possible risk on this produce going off? You want to look at seasonality. So I think for me, what complicates it really is the fact that we're trying to tassel with the terminology. Understand your cost base, understand your market, what they're buying it, and you've got an entire financial forecast there. You can then, of course, if you're pitching at a big FI, they will want it to follow certain processes. Hire a consultant. As an entrepreneur, you need to understand that at all times your resources as well as your skills will always be limited. There is no way you are going to know everything. Be prepared to source professional help from certain people. And I understand it's very difficult as a startup because you don't necessarily have the produce. Perhaps stagger your growth, make it organic. I'm going to do half a hectare. Once I've done this half a hectare, I'll sell it to the guy down the road because I know he buys. I've generated now enough income to be able to hire a consultant who's going to do a business plan, because the ultimate aim is then to expand and get scale. So I think stagger your business, have certain stages and certain targets you've set yourself, and don't be afraid to ask for help. Focus on what you are good at, and just keep it basic. Don't get caught up in the terminology, because that's what makes startups fail in South Africa. We use too many big words that actually don't mean anything. And if we actually just drill down to the basics, how much is it costing me, how much am I making, that's all a business is. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bandile. And I think you touched on a very important subject, is that we are scared. We are scared. We know how to I know how to sow a seed and watch it grow. I don't know anything about paperwork. And let's not forget that there are also other chances there. I know a lot of great, amazing farmers. Amazing, absolutely amazing. And they're older, and they've also been victims of scams out there. Someone says that, no, I'll help you start a business for 1,000 rand. So I also want to just talk to you, because you also deal with the legal aspects of it. If you have anything to share with what we just spoke about now, or add on to Ubandile, you are more than welcome to. But what I want to know from you is that business plan and everything, that's great, but it all starts with land. We need to get land. Now, it's a very touchy subject, I know, but I want to know how we protect ourselves. I'm leasing.
So, mm,
Oh, sorry. Would you like to add on to something?
no, please, finish first.
Okay. No, so with myself, I'm leasing. So please maybe just also expand on how we can protect ourselves, what a lease agreement means and should entail. And also speak on, because I know there's a listener here whom got their a farm back from the government. I think it's a land claim. So how do we protect ourselves when it comes to land ownership? Whether we're leasing or whether we have the title deed.
I think, I just want to go one step back to what Bandile was talking about, because I think it's similar to what I was touching on before we got cut off rudely by whatever's happening in our country. Um, Bandile is correct. It's not that complicated, but you as farmers must not be scared to ask for help. One of the things that I've noticed that has made mega growers or big farmers very successful is the fact that they've gone and asked consultants for help. They don't try and do everything themselves, whether it's from drafting contracts, doing business plans, um, having experts look at your land in terms of location. I mean, like you said, coastal areas grow different things to what would grow inland. We know the Western Cape, for example, with wine farmers, not every grape grows in every part of the Western Cape, contrary to popular belief. So you, for example, will get white wine will come from your Hermanus area, but red wine won't grow as well there. So whoever's growing red wine over there or trying to produce red wine produces ugly red wine compared to the guys that are down in Worcester or in Wellington, So it's that type of stuff. And like Bandile said, it's correct. The research is out there. The data is out there. When you do your business plan and you do your planning to go to a financial institution, you must have done your research first, which is there, which does exist, So it's not like you are starting from scratch in terms of trying to figure out what is the best crop or what is the best product to produce in the specific area that you're situated in. And that's important to keep in mind because you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's there already and the banks already know. So when you come to them, FNB, for example, is quite huge in agriculture. They know a lot about it. So when you come to them, they already have a fair idea of what you're talking about. When you start talking about maize, for example, so you would look silly trying to tell them something that they don't already know. In terms of leasing and tenure, so it's ownership of land in South Africa is called tenure, and basically it's the different ways one can own land or use land in the country. And it's a complicated issue because of the way South Africa is structured, because of our past. We have different forms and different legislation that controls it. Some people have communal traditional land and they're leasing it from a chief or whatever the case might be. And all of those forms, except for proper title owning of a land, is considered insecure forms of ownership, because obviously if you are got a hectare from a chief, it's not as strong in law as somebody that has bought the land and has a title deed, somewhere else. So in terms of that, it depends on the contract that you have, how you drafted it, how long that lease is for, and what does it entail inside the contract in terms of, does it include water? What have you done in terms of water? And when it comes to water, for example, there's the Water Rights Act of 98 that's quite specific about the use of water, how much water you can take, blah, blah, blah. And if you don't get that right from the get-go, you're going to have problems, and it's problems beyond the tenure that you have or the situation that you have in terms of the land that you are operating on, and that's why it's so important from the get-go, whether it's a business plan to go look for funding or it's just your personal business plan in terms of what you want to do. It's so important to have all of those things in place and understand what have you agreed to and what you've agreed to with that person, for example, that you are leasing from. In terms of Land Claims Act, and these land that the government is making available, I actually said to somebody the other day that some of the land that was released recently was a bit silly because most of those places don't have water. So what is the point of going and getting that land or being excited about that land, even if it's 5,000 hectares? What are you going to do with 5,000 hectares that doesn't have water? And as much as I know that in some places there's tanks, there's this, there's that, there's South Africa is a water scarce country. So you almost have to guarantee that wherever you get that land from, you are also guaranteeing water, and what's the water resource? What's the rainfall in that area? Is it like the Western Cape where one is never sure about how much water one's going to get in any particular year? I mean, in the last year, it's been okay, but 2 years ago, it wasn't, and smaller farmers that are not as big and don't belong to bigger sort of not cooperatives. They have another word for it where it's one source of water, for example, or a river that they all share, and they've got these own agreements of how the water works. If there's a drought, then you've got a big problem. And that's something that a lot of farmers don't think about because they get too excited over the land and the possibility of what it could do without having thought of the ABCs of, okay, land goes with water. How much water do I have? And is it sustainable for the next 3 years, 4 years, 5 years of my business plan and what I want to do?
Thank you so much, Katlego, for that. And I think you touched on a very important a matter when it comes to land. I think we all get excited about land, but when the technical questions come, so what are you going to do with the land? That's when we scratch our heads. And it's very important for us to do research and to not be afraid to ask and ask people like yourselves. You guys are really sharing so many important gems. I really want to touch on, okay, contracts. Let's go into contracts a bit more. Let's also maybe elaborate on the leasing contracts, but contracts in general. When it comes to agribusiness, I think it's one of the things that a lot of people miss, or a lot of people are first greeted by, because you can get into co-ops, you can do joint ventures. Like, what should we look out for when it comes to contracts? And how can we protect ourselves? Can we just, like, let's say I want to work with this guy. This guy's like, hey, dude, I have 50,000 Rand. You have the skills. Let's do this. Can I just write an MOU, make him sign it? Is that valid? Or do I need to, like, visit a lawyer and really draft something long and strenuous?
It never has to be long and strenuous per se. So we're not talking about 20 pages of an agreement, but there are some core elements that must be in that contract, whether it's a lease agreement or it's a joint venture or whatever the arrangement might be between you and that person. One of it being, okay, specifics like the duration of the contract. So if I'm going to farm on your land because you've got land and I've got the skills, how long am I on this land for? Two reasons for that is that you don't want somebody abusing you a year later saying, well, actually get off my property. Second problem that you might have is that, or the other reason is that you want to plan ahead. So if this guy says you only have 3 years, I'll give you a 3-year lease on my land, then you know that 3 years is up. So what will I do after 3 years? So already from year one, you're planning for your exit from that land. Maybe you want to use the 3 years to save to buy your own piece of property, or you've identified another piece of land you can lease from for a longer time, or maybe even just to negotiate with that person to say, listen, now we've reached year and a half. Can I extend another 2, 3 years and all of that? So it's all about sustainability and planning ahead. So knowing the duration is important. Is there money exchange? So are you paying that person every month? And if it's every month, how much is it? And does it increase every year? So some lease contracts have next year it's going to increase by 8%. This rental that you're doing, because that's basically what you're doing. You're renting somebody's land. You need to talk about quality of the land. What does this person expect in terms of the use of the land? So if you're going to overgraze, are they going to turn around and say to you, yeah, now you've ruined my land, so now you owe me X because I can't do anything with it now that you're done almost abusing the land, or whatever the case might be? What are your duties and responsibilities, and what are their duties and responsibilities? And those are things that have to be very specifically in this agreement, so that nobody comes up with a new story tomorrow that is different to what you thought or what they thought. I think a lot of people make assumptions in their deals because obviously when we first meet and we're excited, I've got land, you've got skills, we're too excited that we don't think of when things go wrong between us, which they do most of the time, especially if one party is starting to feel like, oh, this one's doing too well, I'm suffering, or I think I can do the same thing, or somebody's offered me a better deal. It will be the only way to secure yourself by being very specific about responsibility, roles, and duties to one another as two parties that have entered into an agreement. I don't know if that answers you properly, Google.
That does. Thank you so much. And okay, I think you guys have really touched on a lot of topics that I really wanted to speak on.
Google, sorry for cutting you.
No
Um,
problem.
I just want to come in on the part about contracts, right? And again, I'm going to go back to that initial point around terminology and us not being afraid of these things because of what we think they are. A contract is a very important document. I fully agree, and I echo the sentiments shared by Katleho around understanding the various terms and conditions of a contract. But I think I just want to take everyone back to that. All a contract really is a legal document that outlines the terms and conditions in which we are going to operate in. No one understands those terms better than yourself, even beyond your lawyer. The lawyer will help you draft it from a language perspective and making sure that you don't tie yourself to things that you're not supposed to tie yourself. But all essentially it is just a document that details how we are going to work. So now what becomes important is, first and foremost, you need to understand what you are trying to do. So for example, if I'm trying to, all I need here is the land, then there's absolutely no reason why I should be getting into joint ventures, getting into long, complicated contracts. All I need is a simple, basic use of land contract. I am going to use your land for this amount. This is what you are going to make sure the land has. This is what I'm going to make sure I return the land is. But if you're trying to establish a partnership, this is someone that you understand that you can benefit from beyond just the land, possibly financial resources, possibly their names that they carry could potentially open certain doors. Then you potentially consider a contract, a partnership contract agreement, or a joint venture, or a consortium. But I think firstly you need to understand what it is that you are trying to do. What is your situation? What is it that you need from that specific person? You need to understand that very clear, and be very frank and very honest with yourself. I need money. I don't have money. Because I think sometimes people, when they enter into negotiations, and I've experienced this a lot when I go into negotiations, particularly SMEs, because people want the deal to work so much, they're afraid to say what it is that they want. Listen, this person's an investor. All you need is their money. You're going to pay them back in 6 months' time, or in 12 months' time, or in 36 months' time, or 60 months' time. Outline that, be very upfront about that. Of course, you can do certain things that will sweeten the deal, make sure that you sign them. But I think most importantly, before even getting to the contract phase, know and understand what you're trying to do, what you need, and whether or not that person or that individual or that institution will be able to provide what you need. Then you go into the phase of contracts. I think we're afraid of contracts because we don't understand what we are doing to begin with. First, outline and understand
I
what
want
you're
to
doing.
interject you there. I want to interject you there, Bandile, because I loved how you said you literally put it in a very simple term, right? This is what I can do. I will pay you back. Now, what happens when you can't pay back? Because honestly, agribusiness is a very it fluctuates. It's not a very stable business, in as much as we can try to mitigate, but we don't control mother nature. So also on the legal aspects, guys, like how can I protect myself now? Because okay, fine, it looks great on paper, my business. I have said that this area, you guys know also as accountants or investors, that you know what, she is in an area where there's sheep farming. Yeah, she should do fairly well. But what happens when I can't pay you back? Now what?
But I think that's the
Um,
thing. And I
yeah.
mean, sorry, Bandit. I think that's the thing where Bandile is saying yes. And I agree with Bandile that from the get go, know what it is that you want before you enter the contract. But if you fail, that's the reason why we have contracts, because in the contract, you will have a clause about failure to do X will result in Y, you know? And that is why it's important, because at the same time, Guru, you might say, I'm the farmer that might make a mistake, or something goes wrong because I can't control mother nature. But at the same time, the same person that you went into a contract with might not fulfill all of the things that they had agreed to originally. So you also need recourse. You might also be in the other position that you need the recourse from them, and that would be included in the contract to say, if one of us breaches, if one of us fails to do X, or one of us fails to pay whatever's meant to be paid, this is what's going to happen. But then, my clients, most of them, I advise them, look, you give yourself also a bit of leeway. You don't write an ironclad contract that says, if I fail to pay you in September, it's over. You can take my house, or you can take my car, whatever. You don't do that to yourself. And that's why, you know like it or not, it's good to have somebody look at your contracts, a lawyer or whoever is a consultant, to look at your contracts to make sure that you've given yourself a little bit of a realistic contract, because as we know, sometimes businesses don't go the way we planned. We have big dreams, but there'll be a hiccup somewhere, you know. So in the contract, you give yourself a break, you know, a leeway, a break, a contingency there that says, should I fail to pay you 1 month, you know, you give me 2 months to rectify, you know, because in that clauses for that as well in the contract, we include that.
Thank you so much, guys. And I actually wanted to bring this up as well because I just remembered when you were speaking about using your houses and your assets as what is this word I'm looking for?
Collateral.
As collateral, yes. So when it comes to institutions like Land Bank, it is actually a thing for farmers that they will say, should you fail X, Y, and Z? I mean, it's a loan, obviously. You know, you need to like now put up your house. So, like, you know, what's that about? Is that something that we need to be like looking into? Like, obviously, farming is already a risk, and we try our best to mitigate that as possible. That's why we have our business plan. It's dated X, Y, and Z, and perhaps our contracts. But now, you know, I'm gonna put up my house or my car and say that if I don't, you know, I'm not able to pay you, maybe let's even say after 6 months, and it's already extended through the clause that I said I will pay you back after 3 months. Let's say it's now 6 months and I've put down my entire house. Like, you know, what's that about? Are we reaching? Does that mean that we can't afford what we're getting into?
I think
Um,
with every,
yeah,
sorry,
sorry,
Bandile,
go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Pepe.
I think with every contract, I mean, if you're going to be approaching your land banks, not IDC, land banks, your normal financial institutions, you will always, in the beginning, they always ask for, you know, some sort of collateral. You know, they're not going to give you 20 million rands without you showing that you've put in X amount of investment in your project yourself. You know, and that's already standard in most of the agreements with your bigger financial institutions, you know. So I think one must remember that already that's just a given, you know, that you are expected to have put some sort of investment. Like when you buy a house, you have to put down a deposit. The bank is not going to always give you the full amount that you're asking for. So that's just almost set in stone, you know, if we're talking about the land bank or your larger institutions looking for money. But I think when it comes to emerging farmers, my thing would be, I wouldn't go for 50 million from the get-go if you have no money to put in yourself, you know, because most people at that amount of money, even if it's a private investor, they do want to know how much have you put in of your own money, because that gives them more confidence to invest in your project versus someone that says, I want 50 million, you know, as if it comes from the clouds, if you understand what I mean. So with emerging farmers, I would always say, like Bandile mentioned earlier, do a staggered approach. You know, if you know that you don't have any assets, unfortunately, that's just the case in South Africa, that most banks, unfortunately, will only give you money because you show them that you've got money in the first place. So a staggered approach when you know you don't have assets or money to put up front is probably the best way and the only way to go, you know, unless obviously you can show that your business also has income that's sizable enough that now it's an investment, not as a startup, it's an investment into growing your business, which is a different topic altogether.
Bandile, did you have something to add?
Yeah, so I just have three quick points to make, Gugu. I mean, I think the first one is, I just like to state outright that I think this model and concept of collateral is absolutely rubbish. It is exclusionary in its very nature. It is steered and formed in such a way that it will always favor those that have. Because how do you start if you don't have? Then, if collateral is the basic or system that they use to evaluate people. And I think it's lazy from our financial institutions. And there's definitely more that needs to be done on that particular front to transform access to finance in South Africa. There's a lot of other countries in the world that are leading in this particular one. You know, we did some work for in Madagascar with this particular one. Collateral is lazy. Secondly, unfortunately, we live in South Africa. You're going to have to live with that particular reality. And also, you know, the issue of risk and whether being afraid that you might lose this and might lose that. Well, unfortunately, that's what entrepreneurship is. You know, it's all about risking things. It's all about doing things that you don't have money to do. So the issue of whether people are reaching, they can't afford it. No one can afford to start a business until it actually starts making money. So don't be too hard on yourself on that particular front. No one actually can afford. But there are mitigating factors that you can put into place to assist you. Collateral doesn't always have to be a physical asset. Sometimes collateral is making sure that you get a letter of intent before you start. It's making sure that you negotiate the sale of that of your produce before you even start. There's a lot of organizations that will buy your produce before you even put a seed in the ground. You know, as long as you can show you have a plan, there's your production plan, you are going to make sure that you meet the requirements. Boxer superstores, Pick and Pay, Spar, there's various that run enterprise development programs that are prepared to say, if you meet all these requirements, I'll buy all your produce. They give you a letter of intent or a takeoff agreement. You can go with that to the bank. Another way to counter collateral is making sure that you've got projections in place, projections that I can back. As an investor, if you can show me projections that the chances of failure here are so minimal, I will give you that money. You know, also as an investor, understand I'm a risk taker. I'm looking to get the next big thing. So sell your idea to me. Sell your idea beyond your head, you know, because I think sometimes as entrepreneurs, we live too much in our heads. You see this thing happening in your head, but you aren't able to actually translate it to real core data. Very simple data. How many potatoes are eaten in South Africa a day? How many of those potatoes are actually in your area? How many markets in your area? What are people currently buying on? Show me data that makes sense, that substantiate and shows me that your company is going to succeed. Then the requirement for collateral becomes less, you know. So I think look at different ways in which to counter collateral, because unfortunately it's the reality we have in South Africa. Also look at incubation programs where they incubate you, they assist you. Look at certain agencies that are in place to try and support organizations, CIFA, CEDA. There's various organizations that are being put in place. The Department of Small Business Development has been doing extensive work in terms of putting certain things in place. Look at potential international donors and international funders, particularly with those that have an interest in ensuring food security. Tailor your business in such a way that it's got a social impact aspect, and that way you can leverage from donors. You know, there's various things that people can put in place. You know, don't just simply say, let me go put my house up. But at the same time, understand that the reality of it is that you're going to have to take some risk. You know, you're not going to have it good on your side, yet I'm putting in my money and you're not willing to prepare to put risk as well. And also address the possibility of failure upfront. Should I fail? You know, it doesn't mean that you don't back yourself. It doesn't mean that you don't trust your business. Understand the risk that you're taking. There might be a drought. There was a drought that year. There was a drought that year. What are the possible implications? It means we're not going to be able to reach these targets. And therefore, what are the mitigating steps? If we don't reach these targets, we can do A, B, C, D. Or because you've given us money, we're going to buy equipment. If we don't make the sales we want, you can use the equipment as leverage, you know, to be able to say, we'll sell the equipment and pay you back. You know, so I think research extensively. Don't just, you know, don't just look at requirements and immediately go into it and say, I'm going to put up a collateral. Look at different things, letters of intent, sign off agreements, promise of future sales. All those things can assist you in terms of mitigating the need for collateral. If you don't have those things and you need to use collateral, you know, be clever about it. You know, be very clever about certain things. Business requires that you're clever, you understand the legalities of things. And I'm sure Kadle can speak to this. An organization is a legal entity, and sometimes it doesn't mean that the director's assets are going to be attached. Perhaps make sure that you enter the agreement from an organization perspective and not an individual perspective. You know, do different things. There's different ways to be smart and beat the system. You know, you need to make sure that you invest a lot on knowledge, on research, and also consult those that have the know, who can assist you navigate this particular. Also understand, whoever you're doing business with is also trying to make money. They're not there to protect you. They're not there to look for over your interests. They're also trying to make money. So once you've got this understanding, it will also help you in how you actually navigate and go into those businesses. But I think we need to really think beyond collateral as a country, as a financial institutions, because it's lazy, it's exclusionary in its very form, and it makes sure that it supports the haves. Hence, in South Africa, you've got a situation where we are the most unequal country in the world. So the issue of collateral is a very passionate one for me. So do forgive me if I became a bit charismatic there.
No, no, we appreciate it. We love it. Thank you so much, Bandile. You guys have touched on very important keys that I really wanted to speak on today. And I love what you said, Bandila, about organizations and actually just being smart about it. I know that if you're an organization, a lot of international funding comes your way as well. So it's just really understanding I think finance and what understanding your business on a financial level and what you can get out of it, because we, as Ukatla said in the beginning, are in the right field. Agribusiness is booming. Agribusiness is a hot commodity. We are hot cakes. So don't overthink it, don't overcomplicate it. State what you have, what you don't have, what you want to get out. I love that. So I think I touched on what I really wanted to say, but you guys can also speak on it. So what do we need to understand? What do we need to take home today about starting an agribusiness when it comes to contracts, tax, compliance, investments? What is it that we need? What is like a package that we just need to have? Katlaho.
I think, Vanilla just made me laugh about being smart about business, and that's very true. I can give you an example. Actually, a lot of my clients, what they do is that they'll have a farm, own a farm, but actually it's not them, and it's not the PTY Limited that owns the farm. It's a family trust. So the grandmother and the opa and everybody owns the land, and then they have a PTY Limited that's the operating company on this land. The same people, by the way, but now you have these different entities. And actually, what happens then is that should things fail, right? So operating company goes bankrupt, whatever happens, they owe whatever money to the bank. Then the bank is going to go after the PTY Limited, not individuals, the PTY Limited, but it can never touch the land because the land is owned by a family trust, and the beneficiary is some 5-year-old somewhere who's still going to preschool. So it's structure. It's understanding, going backwards again. How do we begin our business? What is the smartest and most clever way in order to protect ourselves and to make sure that should any of these other things happen in the world, it doesn't affect me personally as Katleho, or my livelihood in terms of my children, or my family, or whatever the case might be. I think that my leaving thoughts would be, for emerging farmers to think of these things from the get-go, and like we've repeated ourselves a few times, don't get so excited without having thought of the building blocks of how do I get from point A to point Z. What is point A? What does it look like? What is B? What is C? And so on. So that is so important, including offtake agreements. I mean, we didn't really get too much into that, but with offtake agreements, what does it actually say? Does it make sense? Because you can get excited that SPA wants to take your stuff, or potentially is sending out messages that they want to help small scale farmers by taking their produce, but what is actually in those contracts? And that's something that we must be mindful of when we do our businesses, to make sure that it works and is sustainable, and 10 years later we'll still be in the game and we'll be successful and we'll be making money. So yeah, those are just my leaving thoughts for you guys.
Thank you so much, Katlaho. I'm also laughing actually because I think we forgot that, and it's so important. We are smart people. evidently we are farmers. You know, like, let's also be smart about business, and think really long and hard, and not be afraid to ask for help, because we have the potential to make a big business out of food, because food is such an ever growing demand. So that's, I really think I'm taking that, just to be smart about it. Bandile, what are your last parting words? Before, guys, please don't leave. We're gonna open up the floor to the listeners to ask you guys questions directly. But what are your parting words, Bandile? And also, do I need an accountant? You know, sometimes my business, they like, when I'm doing ISARs, they like, you know, who's your accountant, blah blah blah. Is that even necessary? Like, I'm a small scale farmer. Just also talk about that.
I think first and foremost, no, it's not necessary. Accountants are very expensive, and really, accountants are there to report on what's there more than advise you or help you in growing your business in any way. Unless, of course, you find an accountant that's also doubles up as a strategy consultant or as a business development consultant. But I mean, I think for me, all I can really say, you know, and we say this to a lot of to entrepreneurs across sectors, is understand and know what you want to do. You know, understand what it is in the most basic form. What are you doing? You know, and also understand who your market is, who your potential clients are, and all of that. You know, understand that the biggest thing in any business is to understand what you do, what is required to make it a success. You know, read, research as much as possible. You know, we can say all the things we want here. Ultimately, it's going to boil down to you understanding your business. You can bring in a consultant, you can bring in an accountant. Ultimately, all they are there to do is help you with your vision. So first, center yourself and understand what it is that you want to do. Be very realistic about what you can do in the short term, what you can potentially push yourself to achieve in the medium term, and what you can then gear yourself to be able to realize in the long term. You know, so understand all of those things, plan your approaches very well, know what you actually need, so that when you go out there to look for it, you look for what you need. Sometimes people think they need money, but it's not money they need. They just need a market. Some people think they need equipment, but it's not equipment that you need. You just need access to someone who's got the equipment. Understand exactly what you need, you know, and spend more time understanding and ironing that out. Because once you do, you know, it becomes, the growth becomes quite quick, because you're certain and you're stable and you understand what you want to do. So I think for me, that's what, if you know, I had to choose what to leave you with today, is that understand what you need and understand it to the T. People are running businesses they don't understand. People are doing things they don't understand. And when they get questioned, and when it's time to answer, or when it's time where when things hit sort of a tumble area, then they don't know what to do, because they don't understand their businesses and what they're actually trying to do. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, ne. I really appreciate your words, Bandile. Is that we need to understand our business. You know, if anybody should understand our business, is ourselves. You know, nobody can really elaborate and articulate it for you. So it's very important to be in tune about it. And I love how you spoke about equipment, you know, because sometimes as farmers, we feel like we need so much, you know, we need so much machinery, we need the latest tractors, and maybe we can outsource it. You know, maybe we can find other ways to be cost effective and focus on the growth and the 5 year plan, instead of worrying ourselves about things that don't even matter. So I'm now going to open up the floor. I see Prince. Prince, do you have a question for our speakers?
Oh, thank you very much. I just wanted to not to ask a question, but to add to what Bandle was saying. The issue about farmers. You guys, thank you. You're doing a great thing. What I'm realizing is that from the issue to do with collaterals, loans from the banks, is that we have a group of passionate farmers, people who know farming, who are passionate about farming, but sometimes they don't know what to do. In today's modern world, there is a lot of data. Get people who can help you with the data that you have, to help you make decisions that matter. You talked of accountants. There are also data analysts who can help you, uh, who can help you define what the current data that you have say about your farming perspective and where you're coming from and where you're going. That will help you make um loans or make collaterals that will not put you on the losing side but on the productive side, because the fact that you want to borrow a loan is because you want to make more money. It's not, at the end of the day, it's all about more money. So is it really worth it from the data that you have, or it's not worth it? Because sometimes human minds always see patterns faster than anything else, but it also make patterns that it wants to see, which are not the patterns that are on the ground. Data analysts, they help you do that. um the other thing, like, you can do it because sometimes things get expensive, is you guys, you talk to, you form partnerships. You talk to one guy who can do with your data from your group. As a group, they just look into individual people's data and help them, advise them on what to do. Because at the end of the day, when you go to the bank, they have these professionals. So these professionals, they'll be looking at data from the bank's perspective and not from your perspective. So you going for a loan, you are already at a loss, instead of going at an advantage, going to the bank at an advantage. That's my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prince, for that. To remind us that also, guys, there's accountants and there's also data analysts, right? So we'll also look out for that. Thank you so much. Clarence, would you like to ask our speakers anything?
Hi, Google. Clarence, indeed. I would like to ask our speakers for today one question, but I think it's threefold to both of them. First of all, beautiful guys you brought today. I'm really enjoying myself. Bandile and the lady with a beautiful voice, by the way. Very, very nice. I like your minds, guys. You have done justice today, and I really appreciate. I just have a question, which is threefold, perhaps, to both of you. In tonight's session, what is it that you would like to leave with me, Bandile, from the business side of agribusiness, in terms of the pitfalls that you perhaps have seen in an agribusiness for both a startup and one that is ongoing? Could you share with us in a nutshell three perhaps pitfalls that you would want us to look out for as farmers, as we do our businesses? That's from the business side, and then from the legal side, I would really appreciate to just keep that at the back of my mind as I go on with my business of farming. Thanks.
All right, speakers, you got that right. So between the two of you guys, you can start answering his questions.
Thank you, Clarence. I'd be shocked if you thought my voice was nice, but nonetheless. Um, what can I leave you with? Pitfalls, three pitfalls. I mean, I think probably the first pitfall would be yourself. I think as entrepreneurs, we tend to overestimate what we can do. We tend to overproject what we'll be able to achieve. So I think start by being very realistic with yourself, and what it is that you can actually achieve and the time frames in which you can achieve those. I'm not saying don't be ambitious, but be very realistic in how you project, because it's going to determine everything. It's going to determine what you project. It's going to determine the legal contracts that get formed. And if you've overestimated yourself from the start, then you're continuously playing a chasing game. Secondly, I think the one of the pitfalls that you need to watch out for from a production perspective is, if you get something wrong, it can affect your entire produce. And before you know it, you're not getting the yields that you need to be able to recover the costs that you've spent on it. So be very, very specific and understand the production aspect, the raw material requirement, issues around infections, bacteria, issues around theft. You need to very understand your produce and what you're going to be able to produce. And I think lastly, one of the biggest reasons why SMEs fail in South Africa is their lack of understanding of the finances. Invest in understanding your finances that are required in your business. Don't get caught up in the terminology. You don't have to understand deferred tax. You don't have to understand all these big words. Just understand the basic models that surround and your business, your costs, what your requirement is from an equipment perspective, what your market is, and how much you're going to make. And I question you always need to answer yourself and answer it as honestly as possible. Is the money that you're going to make out of this enough to cover your costs? And it doesn't have to be immediate. Very few businesses are actually profitable in South Africa until year 5. So give yourself some, of course, the challenge becomes the cash flow position. But understand this very well. You're not going to make money of from the start. Give yourself time, be honest with yourself, and understand what's required to produce the quality that you want. Because ultimately, without the right produce, you're not selling. So I think in summary, that would be what I would leave you with. So thank you.
I think from my side, and thank you very much for the compliment on the voice. I feel a bit charmed. But on a serious note, the three pitfalls I've seen in farming is firstly legislative issues. People don't keep updated with what has changed in the law, and it changes quite often. The laws that were in existence 10 years ago are not necessarily the laws of now. And the reason for that is because land changes. Your farm will not look the same in 20 years in terms of the quality of the soil or whatever's going on in terms of climate change and all of that. So one really needs to keep abreast of the changing laws and what's being gazetted by the government all the time, whether it's the Department of Water or the Department of Agriculture or the Department even of Environmental Affairs. So that's really important to be aware of legislative changes. Your environmental concerns also are an issue because again, the environment changes, and we've seen that in the last sort of 5 years in farming that one place that used to be able to produce X amount of crop doesn't do that anymore, and farmers have had to think of other things to plant because it's not the same as 10 years ago or 5 years ago, where let's say nachos grew great. Now they have to think of other products. Here in Paarl, I'm in the Western Cape at the moment seeing clients. And what we're seeing is that a lot of people are getting into blueberries now, and they've uprooted their vines and are putting in blueberries because planting grapes, wine grapes, is not productive anymore. It still grows, but it's low yield and they're not making the money they used to make. So that's something that also one must be aware of. And obviously your market opportunities, so who is your market? It's changing all the time, and depending on who you think your market is, whether it's local, whether it's international, you have to always be aware of your market or your potential market and who it is that you want to work with and supply to. So those are the three things I would say that farmers are pitfalls for farmers and must be something that they're always on top of all the time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katlaho, for that. And shout out to you all the way from Paul. And I just want to open up the floor one more time. We still have our speakers. They are being so gracious with their time. If you guys have a question for them, please, request to be a speaker, ask them directly, and then we can close our space. But if there's something that you feel like you really want to know, don't be shy. This is a safe space. Ask your questions, and I'm sure they will do their best to answer you. And whilst I wait for you guys to request to be speakers, I have a question. So, would you guys think, as farmers, right, we should be striving to get these accelerator programs that are coming in from like Germany, from England? Everyone wants a piece of Africa. They want to come and just do accelerator programs. Do you think we should be chasing grants? Do you think we should be chasing you know, sponsorships? Because at the end of the day, that will give me specifically a good boost to my business. If I'm going to do it the long route of drafting business plans, I may not even see a cent in the next 10 years, because that's how much of a long investment agriculture is. So should we be looking at those type of guys?
I think it's worth it to be looking at them because obviously they come from a different perspective and they open up different markets that normally one would not be exposed to. I'll give you an example of places like some of the issues I've seen with my clients is that your countries like Sweden, Germany, those guys are very, very aware of the issues in South Africa, and they're kind of forcing my clients to be compliant, with some of our political issues in the country, and sort of saying to them, we won't take your product if you don't show us that, one, you're treating your workers properly, two, you're complying with BE and all of that. So they're forcing is, well, okay, forcing is wrong word, but they are reinforcing, the laws of our country to say, look, we want to, sustainability for us also includes the treatment of the people of Africa, redressing the past and all that. And I think that's an opportunity for emerging farmers to get involved with foreign grants, foreign companies, foreign countries, because of the fact that already they've got this moral compass that they're using when it comes to Africa and dealing with products that they take into their own country for their people for consumption. So I think it's worth it. But then at the same time, I would look at the contract to see, or the relationship and the grant that they're offering. Then what does it entail? Does it grow you as a business person, as an entrepreneur, or does it usurp you? Because you might find yourself in a different type of arrangement with them where, yes, you're supplying, but you're not necessarily becoming the next ZZ2. You're supplying just them and you stay relatively small. So it goes back to what is it that you want out of that relationship, and taking that grant, or is it going to grow you as a business person? Is it going to grow your yield? What is it going to do? And that is worth considering when you approach it from that perspective.
Thank you so much, Katlaho, for that. Yeah, guys, look out for opportunities ahead. Like, there are a lot of opportunities from other countries, international opportunities. So don't sleep on yourself. Food is international anyway. So, last chance, I'm going to open up the space. Does anybody have a question for the speakers before we close the session? Going once.
Yeah, I've got a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Oh, okay,
Who's
but okay.
speaking? Who's
It's
speaking?
Zolile.
Oh, hi, Zolile. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah. My question is on, 'cause earlier, Bandila said that we don't necessarily need an accountant. So I was wondering if what's his take on use of software? Like I was checked like recently, software Zero for personal bookkeeping and a way to manage my finances. I don't know if that's like a good option. And then my other question was, on interest, when you're taking on a loan, can you speak on what you look at when you're taking on a loan, like the interest rate? Uh, should we be looking to negotiate a lower interest? Because I realize that some of the farmers in my area, they have like lower rates than the smaller farmers. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Zolile. I mean, I think firstly, I I was not necessarily saying that we don't need accountants. I think accountants do have an important role to play. All I was saying is just understanding the stage which your business is and why you would need an accountant. And also, accountants are not a very cheap resource. So if your need is around finances, then you need an accountant. If your need is around production, then of course you need a different type of skill. So I think just to address that quickly. On issues of a loan, I mean, I won't speak really on the contract around it and the legality around it, but more so from a business perspective. I mean, I think you're right by the interest rate. Interest rate is one of the things that you need to make sure that you look at the basis of that interest rate. Of course, it will always be whether it's something 2% basis points above prime or 1% basis points below prime. You need to understand all of those things. And once you have a loan, whenever they speak about the repo rate, you need to make sure that your ears are on that thing, because ultimately that's what drives interest rates. You need to be keeping an eye out for that. So I think the terms of the loans become important, duration of the loan, expected payments on a month-to-month basis. Do you have enough cash flow in the business to be able to service that loan? Because sometimes people, get into loans. They've got a brilliant business. The business in 12 months will make 1 million, and their loan is 200,000, and they can settle it. But because they've tied themselves to monthly payments of 2,000 rand for the next 10 months, on month 5 they don't make that payment, and then they default on the loan and they find themselves in a difficult position. So understand that you must always make sure that the loan that you have speaks to the cash flow projections that you've put out. Are you going to have enough money to service the loan on a frequent basis? Or are you better off paying off your loan on a quarterly basis? Or are you better off negotiating that you pay off your loan only after the third year? Banks are amenable to that. To say, listen, guys, I'm not going to afford payback for the first 12 months. Allow me to stabilize. After the 12 months, I'll begin to make the payments back to the institution. They are allowed to do that, and most of them would actually do that, required that your projections make sense. So you need to look at things like that. Is this loan going to be able to assist you? Also, whenever you get an amount of money, you don't just thumb suck a loan amount. If you need 1 million, you must know why you need 1 million. But, that loan must literally get into your account and get out immediately to do the things that you need to be doing. Otherwise it's sitting dormant in your, as a business person, we get worried as investors if you're sitting on a lot of cash. I know a lot of people want to have a lot of cash, but to me, if you're sitting with a lot of cash, all it says to me is that you've run out of ideas on where to invest that cash. Otherwise, bring my money and I'll put it in something else. Clearly you don't have ideas. So look out for those things. Look out on your ability to pay back that loan, interest rates. Always negotiate interest rate. Never accept the first interest rate that a bank gives you, because remember, I will put if I'm negotiating for the bank, I'm gonna put the best possible position forward. So never accept that first rate they give you. Always the trick I give people is so that you don't get bottled up in terms of the calculations, in terms of loans, compound, all of those things, because it can get unnecessarily complicated. Just have a figure in mind. I can pay back 15,000 rand a month. Give him the responsibility to make it work. Guys, I want this loan. Here's my plan. Here's what I can do. I can afford to pay back 20,000 rand a month. He will then find ways in which to recover his money, whether he increases the duration of the contract, whether he introduces things that fluctuate to say that it will be on a sort of cascading or increasing scale, where it increases at a certain amount. But have a figure in mind and negotiate based on that figure. Of course, be versatile, and ask more than money from banks. Banks have a lot of resources, guys. Banks have experts, banks have professionals, banks have property, banks have clients, Banks have a lot of things. Ask them for more than money. Ask them access to their client base. What current retailers do they have in their books that would potentially produce or buy your products? It's in their best interest for you to succeed, because then you can pay back their money. So ask them for more than just money. I think sometimes people go to banks and they don't negotiate. Treat a bank as another stakeholder that you're there to negotiate with. Don't just be excited that they're releasing money to you. That money could be the end of you. So have a conversation with them, look out for different things, negotiate. If you're in business and you don't negotiate, then you've got a problem. You don't accept ever the first terms that they put on price. Even businesses that want to buy from you, even if Spar came and said, I'll buy everything you make for a certain amount, always just say, okay, try and negotiate a better rate. There's nothing like too much money, there's nothing like too much profit, because you don't know what rainy days are coming. Sometimes people are very apologetic with even their prices. Don't be apologetic with your prices. Unless of course you're trying to sweeten the deal. Only drop your price if someone will buy more. Don't if the person, if you've got a price and they're buying two and they want you to drop the price, only drop it if they'll buy four. That way you can still retain your margin somehow. But yeah, to go back to your question, look out for interest rates, terms of repayment, terms of default. To that question that Google asked earlier, what happens if you don't pay back? Understand what the terms of default are. Negotiate very, very hard on the terms of default. They know very well that they're also taking a risk. There's no guarantees in business, so let them also take on the risk. Put in certain sweeteners in place. One of the things that we did when we required funding was to say, if I don't meet this target at this time, you can take 10% of the business. But if I then meet this target by this time, I'm taking back my 10%. If I don't, you can get an additional 10%. So start negotiating with different things like that. There's various things that you can use. I mean, at the end of the day, listen, if you didn't meet your targets, you shouldn't be worried about letting go of 10%, because your business is not doing well anyway. So it's 10% of nothing really. So I look at different things, negotiate, always negotiate, always negotiate. I cannot overemphasize this enough. Thank you.
No, thanks.
Thank you. I hope that answers your question. Even though I don't see you, but thank you so much. Is there anyone else going once, going twice, who wants to ask our lovely speakers any question related to their agribusiness that they feel like, you know what, if I don't get the answer now, I'm never gonna get it? Anyone? Going once, going twice. Okay, I think that brings us to a close. So I just want to thank you, Katleho and Bandile, for being so amazing and informative. I think I'm literally going to listen to this recording again, because there's so much that has been said and so much has been learned, that we are farmers, but we should stop looking at ourselves just from what we can do. Yes, it's all great and beautiful that we can produce food, but we also need to be businessmen and businesswomen. And that means, upping our game a bit. So I'm answered when it comes to paperwork, what that means for me as a business. So thank you very much for that, guys. And I think that brings us to a close. Bandile and Katlaho, you guys have been amazing. Maybe quick question, you can be biased. Which bank can I go to that is really lenient when it comes to like giving out money? Just FYI. Just FYI, before we leave.
I don't know. Honestly, Badile has already repeated this a few times that, South African financial institutions are very unfair, that they want you to have money before they'll give you money, which is obviously ridiculous. But it is what it is. But, I don't know if any bank is better than any other one. I mean, Land Bank has the same issues and will give you the same issues as your normal top four banks in the country. I think I would look at it from a different perspective, Gugu, and maybe give advice to say, when you're starting your business and you open a bank account, don't go for the one that, asks for a lot of fees. I think that's probably where you should start, so then I would say, I know Capitec has long lines, but, their fees are pretty low, so already
Capitec
you're
is
cutting costs
amazing.
there,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So, yeah, because as somebody said to me, I was advising a small farmer the other day, and I said to him, "Why are you with ABSA? You're paying a lot already, so you're not being very smart in your business in terms of your fees. You should be with Capitec." And he said to me, "Oh, the lines," and I'm like, "Look, be the first in line or the last in line, but use Capitec,
Yeah,
for
hustlers drive,
the
hashtag.
sake of just." Hustlers shouldn't be complaining.
Exactly.
Hustlers should be looking for deals.
Absolutely.
So I know FMB is very strong in agriculture. To be honest, I think something like they invited me to a dinner of theirs, and they were saying that they hold about 68% of farmers farm with them. But obviously
Sure.
they were talking about your mega growers and all of
Yeah.
that. So they're quite massive in terms of data and research and what they do. They've actually moved some of their big bankers, their big Santon guys into farming communities, to service farmers properly. And so, FMB is strong with agriculture, not so strong that they'll give you that 10 million that one needs, but in terms of information and knowledge, they have it. Like I say, I work with them quite closely, so I know that they have the necessary data and information and help.
Yeah.
They have a panel. I sit on the panel of FNB where they call us in as experts on different things to advise their clients,
Mm,
you
mm.
know, on certain issues. So that's one way to go, because it goes to what Bandile was saying. For the banks, it's not just about money; it's also about some advice, because they've got experts, and they can point you in the right direction for different things outside of just financing. So that's how I'd answer that.
Thank you so much, and I'm glad you're here. We appreciate you. Thank you. Bandile, any last parting words of advice?
Yeah, yeah, I'm gonna stay away from that question.
No, that's fine.
On,
We
yeah,
can give
but
you
what I
another
would
one.
say, yeah, what I would say though is banks should always be your last option. To be honest with you, banks are not very kind when it comes to their terms and conditions. I think there are
Mm,
various other ways to source finance. There's developmental banks, there's the IDCs of this world,
mhm,
there's the CFAs of this world, there's the NEF of this world, there's Itala banks. I think I would first consider the developmental banks. There's different ways to raise finance. There's equity finance. There's PE firms. There's individuals. Usually the best way to raise
mm.
money for me, I
Yeah,
think, is individuals.
absolutely.
So to look at different ways of raising funds instead of just immediately navigate or immediately gravitating towards banks. Banks are
Mm.
not very nice. Unless you are big. Banks are very nice to people with a lot of money, but not very kind to people with not a lot of money. So I would advise to stay away from banks unless it was absolutely necessary. You had a contract in place, you were certain about certain things, it was a matter of bridging finance, then cool. Other than that, consider other things, and look at other things. And I think as parting words, all the best to all of you guys, and just be brave, man. Back yourself. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. I've had businesses that didn't work out. I've had cars repossessed. I've had a business liquidated. You get up again, you make it work. That's the whole point of being an entrepreneur. We read stats like on an average, it takes a billionaire goes bankrupt 7 times. Can you imagine 7 times you go bankrupt in order for you to become a billionaire? So don't be afraid, take risks, be informed, research, read. Entrepreneurs are readers, guys. Forget what they tell you. Entrepreneurs are readers. Read, be informed, be knowledgeable, understand the industry that you're working in, understand the entire value chain. Understand beyond maize, understand the transport sector. How are you going to transport that maize? Understand the retail sector, understand, as an entrepreneur, you must be one of the most informed, yeah, human beings around. And don't be lazy to read. Read. There's a lot of information out there. So read, get informed, and all the best. And yeah, shout, keep in contact. If you need advice, thoughts, hit us up. Let's see what we can do. It might not always be immediate. Sometimes, we don't know what to do as well, but yeah, let's see how we can help each other, because really, if we are going to succeed, it's going to be through collaboration. So thank you very
Yeah.
much, and thank you for this opportunity, Gugu. I really, really appreciate it, and
No, we
I've really
appreciate
enjoyed
it.
myself
We
as well.
appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for your time. Thank you for trying to, get back to the space. I know network was an issue because of the load shedding. So I appreciate you guys so much. Thanks for your time. You taught us a lot, and we are very appreciative. So that is the end of Farm Spaces. Guys, catch us next week, Monday. We do have one coming up on Thursday. It's about spinach farming. It's going to be hosted by Unoma. But next week, Monday, we are doing food security. We are doing food security, so it's all about compliance. It's great to be a farmer and all, but how do you take your produce to Bospa, to retail? What do you need? So excited for that one. Thank you guys. I am out. I am closing the space.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.